EVs in the EU. So my sojourn through a few European countries is coming to an end. And this is just a quick snapshot of some of the things that I've come across. Most countries in the EU have had some sort of EV purchase incentive. Tax-free, toll-free, discounts, rebates, and so on. And this has worked very well, especially in Norway, where they had some very decent incentives, which proved highly successful. Norway used a lot of their wealth fund, which actually came from all the oil they sold. Their wealth fund recently hit 13 trillion NOK, which is just under about 2 trillion Australian dollars. And now they're continuing to add to this with royalties from a recent gas project, which is going to go on for, I think it was something like 40 years, producing a huge amount of gas. Yeah, it's a little bit burning gas, creating greenhouse gases, but at least they're using some of that money for EV incentives. Yeah, but all these incentives, they've got an expiry date, and they're all beginning to wind them back as they have done their job. They've increased the purchase of EVs, and they've got people interested. I mean, in Norway in December, over 80% of new cars sold in December were battery electric vehicles, and an additional 10% were plug-in hybrids. So they've got the right idea. The majority of taxis that I saw and used were battery electric vehicles, and taxi companies aren't stupid. They've seen a marked decrease in service fees and fuel costs. And just like Hertz is now finding that the EVs that it's renting out, they're costing around half of their ICE equivalents in servicing. So they're saving money. Other EU countries have not seen quite the same success as Norway, but it's a change that's gaining momentum. The Netherlands does have some problems with the power grid that will need to be solved before they can go fully electric, and the same can be said of several countries in the EU probably. The infrastructure is being built. In Norway, it's brilliant and getting better. I saw so many charging stations, I was getting very envious. Australia is way behind the 8 ball compared to that. Even in other countries in Europe, and over the last 6 months or so, I've actually been to the UK, Spain, France, Italy, and most recently, Norway and the Netherlands. Chargers are easily visible. We need this in Australia. Yes, I know the various state governments are beginning to install chargers, but I don't believe that it's enough. The one major thing that needs to be done is to get the charging infrastructure built out so that people will be more inclined to purchase an EV. And then the government can start looking at incentives, but it needs to initiate the charging infrastructure first. One of the first incentives I think Australia needs to do is to get some form of emissions control, and that will then stop the large numbers of the high polluters that are coming in and make these companies bring more EVs into Australia. Now, I know each state government in Australia has some small initiatives with rebates of a few $1,000s and the like, but I feel that they really need to make them more attractive to help lower the cost of getting into an EV. Tax-free. We've got something called the luxury car tax that was brought in so many years ago to protect the Australian car industry. There ain't an Australian car industry anymore, so they should abolish it. But how many governments are actually going to abolish a tax? Yeah. So over the last 4 weeks or thereabouts, I've sat in a Model X Plaid the new revised version with a yoke steering wheel. Very impressive. I've taken the Neo ES8 out for a good test drive, and I was suitably impressed with that car. I've seen many different types of EVs, from the very expensive top-of-the-range Teslas Model S and X Plaid, the Audis, Mercedes EVs, but also a lot of the smaller, cheaper ones. One of the ones that stood out a lot was the VW E-Up. Now, it's a name that always makes me giggle, that E-Up. But if you're from the north of England, you'll understand E-Up. And another common one is the ID3. I've also seen a Cupra Born driving around, and I've spoken to many of these EV drivers here in Europe, and they're all hugely in favour of the move to EVs. So over the next couple of days, I return home, and hopefully their normal services should resume next week. In the meantime, please don't forget to click that like and subscribe button below. Clicking the like button helps the algorithm promote these types of videos. And if you click the subscribe button, you'll get notified of more content. So many thanks, and I'll see you all very soon.